Hey, Zane here, and welcome back. I want to thank you for tuning in again today. So, in this video, I want to talk about how most people won't get it when it comes to explaining Bitcoin, trying to orange pill others, as we say in Bitcoin. Orange pilling is all about trying to influence and explain the benefits of Bitcoin to people you care about, typically. But I want to explain why that's difficult and why you can kind of lead a horse to water, but as we know, we can't make it drink. And so, you know, I believe our duty is to, number one, take care of ourselves. I think it's really important that we get our own personal house in order. And that, of course, refers to ourselves personally, our direct family. But of course, then you may have brothers, sisters, mothers, aunties, uncles, even kids. In my case, I've got 3 daughters in their 20s. And we just want to see everybody actually get Bitcoin. We want them to see the benefit that Bitcoin brings and how it can make their future brighter. But most people are just simply not going to get it. And there is a few reasons for that. So I want to kind of dive into that. There's actually 3 main reasons that I've found over the years that people tend to ignore Bitcoin. But the first one is that it's a paradigm shift. Now, essentially what that means is that it's really the opposite of everything that we're used to. And if you think about it, we've really had 50 plus years of a system of money that we only know. There's no other system other than fiat currency, a currency that is essentially owned and controlled by the government and central bank, essentially with no checks and balances. We don't get to vote whether they issue more of that currency. And so we're kind of stuck in this system, this debt-based system known as fiat currency. And that's all we know. That's all most people know. It's really all of our parents even know, even though most of the baby boomers were around and can probably recall a time where currency was actually backed by something tangible. Used to be backed by gold up until 1971, at least partially. And so we've got to understand that Bitcoin comes in as a fixed deflationary monetary instrument, the first truly finite, scarce monetary technology that humanity has ever seen. And we're expecting people to understand what that actually means. And it takes time. It's not something that you can, explain to somebody in 5 minutes and expect them to just get it. And that's why, you just got to be patient with people. Take care of yourself first. Make sure that you understand what you're actually parking your value in when you decide to become a Bitcoiner. It's not something that you should just sort of, put a little bit of capital in or a bit of savings in and then kind of forget about and never go back to. I'm a great believer that if you're going to be a long-term Bitcoiner and you really understand what it represents, not just for your own financial future, but also how, as adoption takes place around the world, what this is actually going to mean for the economy, for society in general, all the downstream effects that having a sound money is going to have on society. And this kind of ties back into this thing about trying to explain it to people and it being a paradigm shift. And that is that most people will not get it until they're forced to get it. Most people won't get it until they're forced to get it. And what typically does it take for somebody to be forced to do anything? In reality, people only really make any changes or go on a hunt for changing anything or learning if their life gets disrupted. And until that happens, and it happens in a noticeable form, most people are not going to do anything. And so when it comes to money and finances and creating a financial future, most people are more than comfortable with the income they're earning, even though they may notice the cost of living, even though they may be noticing the price of rents and homes and mortgages and insurances and everything going up. It's far easier for them to kind of just accept it, maybe complain about it a little bit, but just to get on with their day, get on with their week, look forward to the weekend, do all the things they have to do, rather than to consider that over here there may be a solution that can really reshape their financial future. And so you and I both know that Bitcoin represents that solution. The problem is most people don't recognize it yet. And we have to remember that less than 5% of the population owns any Bitcoin whatsoever. And so the mass adoption is still coming. You know, being involved in Bitcoin now is kind of like buying Amazon shares in 1999, or, you know, being one of the first to, you know, start using email in at the same period of time. You know, and so we have to understand that we are really pioneers in this space when it comes to the general population. And, you know, it's going to take the mainstream masses time, and that could mean people that you care about and love. It's going to take them time to actually get this. The sad part about that is that the price to get access to Bitcoin is going to run away from most people. And that's the most difficult thing for me to accept, is that people who I care about, who I know should be saving in Bitcoin, they should be allocating a percentage of their weekly, fortnightly, quarterly income, their surplus capital, to Bitcoin. They just don't get it yet. And when they do get it, I know they're eventually going to get it, because A, they're either going to be forced to get it because the world's just being repriced by Bitcoin, and they're going to eventually see that the only way to protect and preserve their capital, their purchasing power, is to be in Bitcoin. Or they're just going to have a light bulb moment where they realize that, you know, Bitcoin is genuinely the best performing asset to be in. And even people who are successful in the current fiat debt-based system, a lot of people with a lot of property assets who've done very, very well out of the debt-based inflationary system, but at some point they're going to actually realize that all of those assets are being repriced by this more scarce and finite asset known as Bitcoin. So all of this is a paradigm shift. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to be patient with people, worry about yourself first, influence others where you can, but don't sort of get too bogged down with, you know, your inability to be able to orange people that you care about and love, because it's even difficult for me. It's difficult, I know, for a lot of people who have been in Bitcoin for some time, because the reality is that most people can't kind of see tangibly how Bitcoin is benefiting your life from a day-to-day basis. And so there's probably less likelihood that they're going to sort of say to themselves, wow, you know, he or she is doing really, really well because they're a Bitcoiner. I better check out this Bitcoin thing. It kind of doesn't work like that, because what we're doing as Bitcoiners is we're constantly revisualizing or crystallizing a brighter future for ourselves, for our families, and for humanity. That's what we do. And so we're not as much present focused as we are future focused for the most part. Now, I'm not saying that everyone in Bitcoin is like that. I'm just saying that the general sentiment around Bitcoin and people who are involved in it and have been for some time is one of really looking towards the future. And the reason for that is because most people don't want to sell their Bitcoin. And you can see this on chain. You know, the vast majority of Bitcoiners are long-term hodlers. You know, they're people who are continuing to protect and preserve their Bitcoin. They do not want to sacrifice the future value of that asset for the present. And that is why you're not seeing or you may not see, this wave of people who are all of a sudden, deciding to exit Bitcoin, go back into fiat currency so they can buy a flash new car or a flash new house, because they know the minute they do that, they're sacrificing an enormous amount of value in the future, given where we are in the adoption cycle, all the tailwinds that are behind Bitcoin, etc. So I just want to share with you two more thoughts to wrap up today's video. But the first thing is, like I said, it's a paradigm shift. Most people are going to take some time. The second reason is that typically most people they are very easy at, or very good at, jumping to conclusions without doing any homework whatsoever. And so, we live in a world now that is full of different messages that come from all over the place. There was a time where the only form of messaging that we were really subjected to, of course, was Channel 9, Channel 7, Channel 10, whatever it might be. It was just the mainstream news outlets, and that was our main source of information. Whereas now we have a decentralized network of information that we have access to, and so we're able to self-educate more than ever before. The problem is that most people still rely on the Today Show or Sunrise or the evening news or the Current Affair or whatever it might be as their main source of news. And so, if there's a statement or a comment or anything that's made about Bitcoin that perhaps is flippant or is negative or is sort of mocking people for being involved in Bitcoin or whatever it might be that you see from time to time, people hang on to that. We hear all these narratives like, Bitcoin is going to be banned, or it's, bad for the environment, or it's a bubble, or, it's too volatile. There's so many different narratives that are spun around Bitcoin that people hang on to, and it causes them to do nothing, and totally dismiss it. And so that's the second reason. People are very, very good, for the most part, at just jumping to conclusions without questioning the information they're being fed. And that's a shame, because it prevents them from being able to move forward in a constructive way when, you and I know that there is something really there worth pursuing when it comes to Bitcoin. But we're just in a world now where people just don't want to think critically for themselves. They just want to accept the prevailing messaging that's out there, even if it's false. And then the third and final reason is really to do with laziness. It's to do with ignorance, it's to do with laziness, it's to do with the fact that to learn about Bitcoin, it actually takes work. It actually takes a degree of learning and study and a willingness to actually expand your understanding of what money is, to learn a little bit about the history of money and how it is that we actually got to this situation that we're in right now, where you can see the effects everywhere, and yet even still most people are just going through their days just hoping that it'll get better. When the reality is it's not going to get better, because of the amount of debt that's in the system. There is no tools available to the system other than to create more debt, to continue to support the existing debt that's in the system. And so, I know that sounds a little tricky to get your head around, but we have to realize that a debt-based system requires more debt, the issuance of more credit, in order to survive. And this is why they will continue to print money, they will continue to print inflation, because they cannot have a situation, for example, where house prices drop by 20% like they have in the past, in decades gone by. Many believe, and I believe, that cannot happen now, because if that was to happen, it would create absolute chaos, because everybody's wealth is tied to their family home, and Australians by and large are in enormous debt when it comes to mortgages. And so the way that they're able to keep collateralizing the debt is to just keep creating more inflation, so that the house prices continue to stay buoyant, to stay up, and to ensure that they won't fall. The problem is that this also creates a cost of living crisis for everybody that doesn't have assets, who doesn't have their capital parked in assets. And so, that is the point. We just have to understand that learning about Bitcoin and what it actually does, how it protects, preserves, grows, and authenticates your purchasing power. It enables you to store and preserve your economic energy. And, even though on a day-to-day basis, the price of Bitcoin may fluctuate, over the long term, Bitcoin is outperforming every other asset. And so if you use it as a savings technology, what you're going to see is over the course of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, you're going to see that you're going to be able to buy more and more stuff with that economic value that you've stored in Bitcoin, as opposed to if you had have stored it as cash in the bank. And, people who have a significant amount of capital, they're going to notice that the price of the real estate, for example, that they're buying is just going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper over time when it comes to purchasing real estate through Bitcoin. And so, we've seen the graphs and the charts that show that, in 2016, so essentially over the past 8-9 years, the price of a median priced home in this country and, in the US, it's pretty much the same when you take into account the currency conversion. What we've found is that a median priced home in this country and in the US has gone from 650 odd Bitcoin to today is around 6 to 7, 8 Bitcoin. And so, the price of a home has fallen quite dramatically over the past 4, 8 years. And yet most people can't see that. They can't see how Bitcoin is repricing everything because of its absolute scarcity. And so I think once this becomes a crossroads moment where a lot of people are going to realize that this is actually happening, we're going to see a wave of capital transferred out of traditional assets such as real estate to Bitcoin. So we're in fascinating times. Don't panic if people don't get it in the first instance. It doesn't mean that you've got it wrong. Doesn't mean that they're never going to get it. It just means that you need to be patient. You need to keep staying humble and stacking sats, as we say in Bitcoin. And just remember that the world is coming. The world is coming for Bitcoin, and Bitcoin doesn't care how long it takes. It's going to keep doing what it does, producing new blocks every 10 minutes. And it's going to keep repricing the world. It's happening now. People say, when's this Bitcoin revolution going to start? If you're paying attention, you'll see that it's happening now. It's actually happening right now. If you look at the price of a piece of real estate in Australia, in an area where you live, and you price it in Bitcoin from, let's say, 3 years ago, could even be 2 years ago. If you price that home in Bitcoin and the value of Bitcoin, how it was 3 years ago, and now you price it in today's dollars, you will see that the price of that home has fallen somewhere between 70 and 80% when you price it in the hardest form of money. So I want to leave it there today. I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope you got some insight, some value. I want to thank you for being a part of my community, new people joining every day, and I really appreciate that. Please like, share and subscribe, and please feel free to leave me a comment if you'd like to do that as well. But until next time, have a great day. This is Zane signing out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.